He is Richard Anderson Falk, who is the Albert G. Mitbank Professor Emeritus of International Law at Princeton University and a visiting distinguished professor in Global and International Studies of the University of California, Santa Barbara. He has served in various capacities in independent human rights inquiries, especially in relation to Kosovo, Ethiopia and Liberia in the Southwest African case, and Palestine. So we listen to Professor Falk.
Good afternoon. I salute all who have convened and are participating in this international forum on lawfare, and wish that I could have been with you in person to share the experience. The title of the conference accurately identifies the core of the challenge faced by the people of the Philippines. The prolonged detention and framing of Senator Laila de Lima, not only a brave and dedicated political figure, but an elected member of the Senate of the Philippines, is a shocking reminder of how abuses of power occur in a country that claims to be a constitutional democracy. Senator de Lima's tragic saga gives an anguished concreteness to the challenge being mounted by the Duterte government against the freedom of expression and associated rights of political dissent. What this pattern represents, above all, is the distorted application of law and the manipulation of basic institutions of government. Law does not serve its proper role as protecting the citizen against abuse by the state, but rather functions as an instrument of naked power deployed by the state against notable critics and opposition figures, including persons elected to the highest offices of the land. Law becomes an instrument of the authoritarian designs of an oppressive political leader. Such a leader views criticism not as part of the essential give and take of a political democracy, but rather as an unacceptable assault on his leadership. It is against this background that I wish to offer some thoughts on lawfare as a weapon of the powerful, not in its appropriate role as a source of restraint to ensure the just exercise of power, but as an inquisitorial tool used to suppress Senator de Lima, a revered and previously leading member of legislative activity in the Philippines. There are 4 preliminary observations that I wish to make. First, what is happening in the Philippines, it is a global trend that threatens not only democracy, but the protection of human rights, the constitutional structure of government based on checks and balances, the dignity of individual citizens, and the independence of persons elected to serve in the government. Law is being deployed as a weapon of government to be used against the citizen, especially against persons with political credibility and stature, as is the case with Senator de Lima. Secondly, such repressive uses of law by leaders is not new, although its widespread and flagrant use by democratically elected governments that enjoy popular support among the citizenry is a new and deeply disturbing phenomenon. Thirdly, and most significantly, lawfare as such should not be uncritically condemned, but rather its use as a means to deny basic rights should be unconditionally exposed, opposed, and rejected. The manipulation of lawfare to serve regressive ends is perverse when lawfare has the potential, when properly deployed, to be used in the pursuit of justice. It is important to distinguish between such contradictory roles of law, as repressive and as emancipatory. Fourthly, I will focus on its negative dimensions that pertain to the case before us, keeping in mind the potential role of lawfare's progressive relevance to Senator de Lima's plight. During the Marcos reign of power in the Philippines, I worked closely with Walden Bello to organize a session of the Permanent People's Tribunal in Brussels that carefully documented the crimes of the Marcos government as perpetrated against the citizenry of the country. The published version of the tribunal produced a devastating record of abuse of state power, which, when published, helped prepare the atmosphere for what later became the People's Power movement of the mid-1980s. In terms of lawfare, this civil society initiative was an example of progressive lawfare. Such formats have been used in many settings around the world to exhibit the abusiveness of a particular government. The reliance by autocracies on repressive lawfare is neither surprising nor new, although this terminology was not often used in the past. Although there have been aspects of constitutional legal orders that have relied on repressive uses of law, for instance, apartheid South Africa, which possessed a constitutional framework to validate its exploitation and oppression of non-whites and their exclusion from civil rights. In recent years, especially in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, national security discourse in the United States has been a battleground for contesting ideas about how lawfare was used and misused. National security hawks contending that according due process protection to those suspected of terrorist activities was lawfare interfering with national security imperatives. In sharp disagreement, civil libertarians invoked law and civil rights to oppose and denounce the demonization of Muslims and the accompanying denial of rights to those accused of criminal activities that supposedly endangered national security. The mass internment of Japanese as a group with legal residence in the west coast of the United States for alleged national security reasons at the start of World War II, after the Pearl Harbor attacks, was a fundamental abuse of individual rights of due process by the U.S. government, but upheld by a majority of judges in the U.S. Supreme Court who proved complicit in this negative instance of lawfare. To this day, Japanese internment remains a major regrettable departure from the rule of law in the United States, later gathering apologies and expressions of regret from presidents and other political leaders. This kind of departure from the rule of law in wartime, although to be opposed in defense of democratic values, is something different and less serious than the lawfare tactics of autocratic leaders seeking to stifle dissent and discredit opposition in state-society relations. These tactics, if successfully, engulf all branches of government, having the effect of disabling democracy altogether. The regressive impact of such lawfare extends beyond the concrete abuse of individuals. However prominent, such tactics intimidate many more than they punish, and thereby act to pacify the whole society at the very time when the citizenry needs to be mobilized to protect the integrity of the system. Lawfare can be viewed either positively or negatively, depending on overall context and the motivations behind invoking law. Let me be clear, there is no ambiguity in relation to Senator de Lima's case. It is without doubt an extreme instance of negative lawfare. What we have around the world with the emergence of such leaders as Trump, Modi, Bolsonaro, Erdogan, and Duterte is this new phenomenon of democratically elected procedures elevating and even sustaining anti-democratic leaders despite their abuse of positions of preeminent authority to obstruct and punish those in the opposition by manipulating law and even the most basic governmental institutions to serve the purposes of power at the expense of justice. To explain why a particular action is taken or a specific accused person is framed to seem guilty by normal legal practice. Such tactics involve deliberate manipulations of law and government procedures, including the erosion and subversion of the vital independence of legislative and judicial institutions, and a design to cripple opposition politics by criminalizing its leading opponents. In the process, if unopposed and persistent, the very status of a constitutional political order is drawn into question. It seems clear that we are, in this case, seeking to protect not only Senator de Lima, but the people of the Philippines as a whole against regressive lawfare. There is little ambiguity when dissent is muffled by criminalizing the dissenter, as here, although the true nature of the accusation is hidden beneath clouds of false allegation of normal criminality. Senator de Lima has also been victimized by Duterte partisanship in the Senate, including being deprived of the opportunity to serve the people who elected her to office for a term that does not expire until 2022. She has been denied the right to vote on legislative issues and to participate in debates. Removed from her role as chair of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights in the Senate, an apparent retaliation for accusing the Duterte policies of unlawful extrajudicial executions of persons accused of dealing in drugs. While acting against Senator de Lima, she was attacked in unspeakably vulgar terms by Duterte supporters in language that was a vicious form of character assassination. The role of this forum in calling wider attention to the abuse of Senator de Lima by all branches of government is a vital challenge to the resilience of Filipino constitutionalism. We come now to the question of what is to be done under these circumstances. Responding to lawfare as effectively as possible depends in the first instance on assessing the context, above all the degree to which executive authority, judicial independence, and legislative autonomy are operating within constitutional limits. If the deviation from adherence to the rule of law is partial, exceptional, and seems reversible, then a maximum effort should be made to make intelligent use of formal legal procedures as provided. Such professional lawyering should be supplemented, to the extent possible, by media coverage and the engagement of academic experts that exposes the political nature of the misuse of law and mobilizes a sympathetic public opinion. Such extra legal pressure in a political system that maintains its claims of democratic legitimacy can be effective in persuading wavering judges to do the right thing. The challenge is more difficult where the institutions of government have been repeatedly subverted by the autocratic leader, and especially under conditions where the opposition media has been eliminated or cowed into submission, and popular protest activity is met by harsh police tactics. Earlier international efforts to mount petition campaigns by prominent citizens around the world in defense of a political prisoner are often successful, and still may be worthwhile in a case of this sort, where such a respected and prominent elected official is being victimized by lawfare. Autocracy is almost always a matter of degree especially if free elections remain. If opposition politics are tolerated, then it is possible to challenge the system effectively. This in turn may lead the government to restore some liberal features of governance. Autocrats prefer to act in the dark, using their control over media and supporters to smear opponents. Senator De Lima's case is an extreme example of law gone wrong, a pattern of injustice being challenged to the extent possible by a courageous and highly professional lawyer. But this may not be enough. Other courses of action, including progressive lawfare, should be under consideration if further failures to render justice on behalf of Senator De Lima should occur. It is a sign of some democratic resilience in the Philippines that a conference of this kind can be organized and go forward. It will be a test of sorts as to whether the Duterte government will extend its use of regressive lawfare to uphold the suppression of dissent and criticism. In my reading of the legal briefs and documents pertaining to Senator De Lima's case, I'm convinced of her innocence and her victimization. She also has the high-profile support of such a warrior of human rights and democracy known the world over as Walden Bello. I fervently wish Senator De Lima a bright future of the sort that her struggle deserves. It has been a privilege for me to have this opportunity to participate in this forum. I wish you all the best.